Good evening. May I request all of you to please take your seats. We will begin the session in a moment, exactly at 7. May I request people sitting behind may take the front seats as well. Good evening. My name is Deepak Mukhi and I'm the Regional Director of FICCI in Maharashtra. A very warm welcome to all of you to today's white paper release event on a theme of India's digital revolution, unlocking economic growth through fintech innovation, which is being organized by METI Startup Hub in collaboration with FICCI and the Dialogue, which is the knowledge partner. This is a precursor to a G20 Digital Alliance, Innovation Alliance Summit, which is going to happen in Bangalore next month between August 17 to 19th. And this is one of the side events of G20 working group meeting. We are going to begin this session by inviting our chair for the FICCI Capital Market Committee, Mr. Sunil Sangai, who's going to give us a welcome address on behalf of FICCI. Mr. Sangai is an investment banker with over 3 decades of experience in M&A and capital market advisories across sector. Prior to founding Nova One, he's also a startup actually. Sunil has been in a key leadership position in HSBC India, Goldman Sachs, JM Morgan Stanley, and as I said, he currently chairs the National Committee on Capital Markets of FICCI. He's also executive committee member of FICCI and FICCI Maharashtra, and also obviously member of many committees at SEBI. So may I invite Mr. Sunil Sangai for his welcome address, sir.
Good evening. Good evening to this young startup crowd from this old man. I say this because as I was coming up in the elevator, I heard a conversation. There were 2 people, the age 30 and 35. I guessed all of that. Actually, I heard through the conversation. And the 30 years old person was telling 35, don't feel so bad, you are not 50. You can imagine there's somebody who's standing there. But this is the startup, and I feel mentioned a very warm welcome on behalf of FICCI and METI to this important launch program where we are launching the white paper titled India's Digital Revolution, Unlocking Economic Growth Through Fintech Innovation. As you know, this is being organized, as Deepak mentioned, jointly with METI Startup Hub and FICCI and the Dialogue as our knowledge partner. And this is on the sidelines of the G20, which is going to G20 Digital Conference, which is going to happen in Bangalore later in August, where Government of Maharashtra is also going to really participate. Through the evening, you would have a lot of participation from the Government of Maharashtra officials. They are stuck, I'm told, that just across the road in the assembly, because assembly session is going on, but they are on their way. And also, we are expecting Honorable Chief Minister at some point of time. Government of Maharashtra actually has been a big support and important participants to the startup ecosystem, as you all know. And the economic hub system in India for the startup and in a place like Bombay and in Maharashtra. As you know, Maharashtra is a home for a large number of financial institutions, technology companies, and startups. And this makes it an ideal place for fintech innovation. And therefore, as you see, a lot of fintech is actually mushrooming in Maharashtra, and therefore there couldn't have been a better place than Maharashtra for this. Particularly the Maharashtra government's policies, including some of the recent policies on the fintech, has facilitated this. Things like formulation of the fintech policy, where the Maharashtra fintech policy, which was launched in 2018, the government actually set out a vision for this sector and outlined a number of initiatives to support its growth. And we are seeing the impact of that actually coming out now. The Maharashtra government also established a fintech hub. This is called Mumbai Fintech Hub, and this was established in 2019. It is one-stop shop for fintech startups and businesses. It provides a range of services, including access to funding, mentorship, and networking opportunities. Networking is the most important part in fintech. Then providing the policy support, which is extremely important, including the support in taxation, simplifying policies and regulations, clearing the environment, the tax breaks, etc., which I mentioned, and promoting the collaboration between the public and the private sectors. That is something which Maharashtra government has done extremely well, and we must compliment the Maharashtra government for that. Finally, I would say that the important part of, as I said, for the fintech is collaboration. The fintech ecosystem is a complex and interconnected ecosystem. Fintech companies need to collaborate with each other, as well as with the banks and the regulators, which are all based out of Bombay, and other stakeholders in order to succeed. And we see this happening regularly. I deal with SEBI and RBI, and I see how they are also reaching out and embracing fintech and embracing new innovation. We see this happening in the banking sector all the time. We deal with a lot of fintech in our professional life. We at FICCI, particularly as a Maharashtra chapter, which Deepak actually leads, we are very committed to the fintech ecosystem, and we think it is one of the most dynamic and innovative platforms in the world. With the continued support of the government, and particularly government of Maharashtra and the fintech community, I'm confident that the Maharashtra will become the global leader in the fintech innovation. With this, I know there are a number of programs which are lined up this evening, including a very informative panel discussion. So we will progress on that. Thank you very much once again for your participation despite the heavy rain and traffic. I am sure you would enjoy the rest of the evening, and this white paper, which will be released today, will be a good read for you. Thank you very much once again for coming over, and Deepak, over to you.
For the evening while we are here. And now we will move on to our panel discussion where we have eminent panelists with us for this session. And before I invite panelists, I would like to invite our moderator, Mr. Kazim Rizvi, who's the founding director of the dialogue, to come on the dais. Along with him, let me invite Mr. Ajay Thakur, who's the head of SME and startup at BSC Limited. Mr. Ajay K, Chief Sales Officer from FIA Global. Mr. Rajesh Meerjankar, MD and CEO of Kia AI, and Mr. Sachin Petkar, General Manager, Roynet. So I'll leave this to you, Kazim, to give an introduction to the upcoming program as well as on the panel discussion.
Thank you, Deepakji. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the participants who have come here, braving the Mumbai rains and the traffic. I don't live here, so I don't have to brave this, but I think it's a great view outside, and the sea looks fantastic. So I think we are ready for a very enthralling panel session on fintech in India, and I think the honorable speakers before me really outlined the objective of the event. I would like to welcome our speakers. Rajesh ji, thank you so much for joining us. He runs a very interesting tech startup. In fact, I was just talking to him before the event started, and it seems that he's one of the real startup people from the 1990s. So look forward to your inputs on fintech. Mr. Ajay Thakurji, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. Of course, would love to get your perspectives on what the BSC is doing, and of course, just generally looking at the regulator side, and just in terms of the technological revolution when you look at finance, how that is evolving. Mr. Ajay K, thank you, sir, for joining in today. I think it's great to sort of see a very wide, diverse set of expertise, and Sachin ji is, of course, here, who we have been interacting with as well, and look forward to hearing his inputs as well. Before we start, I would like the organizers to just run the video, which Meti Startup Hub CEO, we have developed a video which we wanted to just show you. So we just want to sort of run the video, and then we'll kickstart the panel session.
The group of 20 represents around 85% of the global GDP, over 75% of the global trade, and about 2/3 of the world population. Led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India, in its year of G20 presidency, aspires to bring humanity together to help shape a new paradigm of sustainable globalization inspired by the traditional philosophy of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, or one earth, one family, one future.
भारत की G20 अध्यक्षता इंक्लूसिव, एम्बिशियस, डिसिसिव और एक्शन ओरिएंटेड होगी.
With the world fast adapting to digital innovations, India is inviting global startups and innovation from all G20 member initiatives in 6 sectors under Digital Innovation Alliance. The G20 Digital Innovation Alliance Summit will be held in the city of Bengaluru and will see global speakers, startups, unicorns, industries, corporate and the government aiming to showcase digital solutions for various world economies. The summit will not only celebrate the startups but find transformative digital solutions that are needed for the betterment of economies and the upliftment of humanity. Transforming billions of lives across the globe, the Digital Innovation Alliance is a decisive step towards equitable growth for one and all, with the vision to create a futuristic, prosperous, inclusive and developed society at its core.
And we'll begin the panel session. And I just sort of wanted to give a little bit of a context to what we're trying to do here. So as you know that, we have a Digital Innovation Alliance, which has been formulated by the Ministry of IT, which is a key pillar of the G20 deliberation, which are going on right now. Within this, we have 6 key sectors which we have looked at, where there is a lot of focus on bringing startups from all the G20 countries to interact in India and engage with Indian startups as well and share their ideas. And the best ideas will then get incentivized, etc. Those 6 sectors are fintech, edtech, health tech, agri-tech, cybersecurity, and circular economy. So around these 6 sectors, the event which we are doing in Bangalore next month, we will be, of course, showcasing startups from different regions across the globe and their expertise. And in the run-up to that big event which we are doing next month, the idea was to prepare a series of white papers to showcase India's prowess and leadership across these 6 sectors. And the white paper which we are publishing today looks at finance technology, which is, of course, fintech. And we've sort of analyzed the growth trajectory which India has seen in the last few years, in the last decade, in fact, with respect to the adoption of mobile finance in the hands of, the average Indian user, and how digital public goods such as UPI, QR codes, account aggregator, etc., have really transformed the ability of users being able to capitalize on the advantages of digital economy, to become digitized, to sort of get into the mainstream banking ecosystem, and to leverage that to support their families and to support their incomes and household needs and expenses and etc. Along with this, the ability of internet and the ability of technology itself to bridge the gap between demand and supply, to bring people together in terms of being able to access services, in the ability to access goods, and in their ability to be able to access finance as well, is really leveraging and sort of pushing the growth of the digital economy. And as we all know that, our goal as a country and of course, guided by the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister is to become a $1 trillion digital economy and a $5 trillion economy at large, where $1 trillion digital economy, so 20% of that will come from the digital economy itself, which in my opinion will drive the growth of traditional economy in the next 10, 20 years, right? So the decade which we keep talking about will actually push the lever for the next generation of economic growth in India, and that is already being witnessed with the rise of, numerous unicorns and startups which we have, and it's a pleasure to, see some of the startup folks sitting here today who have innovated, who have developed technological solutions across different value chain and life cycles. And I have a few sitting with us here as well. So would love to sort of get their perspective, and I would like to start with Rajesh ji, and you happen to sit right next to me, so you will take the first question. And I think just sort of broad opening remarks I would like to hear from you all before I get into the Q&A mode. And of course, we'll have our audience participate as well. So, but we're looking at a 45 to 60-minute panel session. And Rajesh ji, I just want to start with you. And you are a technologist yourself. You've been running something for almost 3 decades now. So you've seen the curve of Indian economy and the way, people have, taken to technology. It's like, it's been very natural for Indian citizens to adopt technology across different cities, tier 3, tier 4 cities in different regions, cutting across language barriers. What is your perspective and what is your thought around the next 10 years in terms of the country going forward and the role of fintech as a solution and as an innovation to support growth, startups, and also to bring people together?
Thank you, Kazim. Good evening, everyone. Kia.ai as a company is one that's focused on financial solutions. We've been around from 1995, but the reason we qualify to be called a startup is that we reinvent ourselves with every change in generation of IT. And that's, it's interesting to observe how IT has moved from when we started off with branch banking in 1995, being one of the first companies to be a part of the pilot that Reserve Bank of India put out to automate banks. And then now to look at the economy of the country being driven purely by a revolution on digitization around fintech. So in my view, if we were to look at what's changed in the last few years, the primary success factor I would think is the creation of digital public infrastructure, which has enabled fintech. So if you look at the key drivers for the spurt in the growth of digital transactions, it of course starts with the advent of mobile phones, smartphones rather. But there are so many countries that have seen smartphone revolutions, right? And nobody has seen a growth like what India has seen in terms of digital transactions. You look at the comparison to China that probably had smartphones before us, or better infrastructure on telecom before us. You look at the aspect of how the USA or UK or the various European economies have had access to technology before us. Comparatively, India has had leaps and bounds in terms of success. So I would say that the success of DPI in India is one of the critical factors. Importantly, Aadhaar, and then NPCI's stack, India stack. If we look at the whole part of getting a digital ID, then extending that forward to having a infrastructure that provides ubiquitous payment across the board, that is something that has driven the volumes. Now, when we look at taking that forward to a 10-year view, I would say that India will move from where it was in digital banking or fintech to moving to open banking, then going to open economy where fintech and banking come together, various other financial services industries like insurance, etc., would bind together to provide a cohesive sort of framework across. And then this involves, let's say, typical components like OSEN, which is the Open Credit Network. Then you have the ONDC that will typically drive commerce in a way where, which the world has not seen. We may have now seen a pilot of 100,000 merchants, but when that extends to 1 million and then catches scale in terms of adoption, where even the large scale e-commerce or retailers come onto that network, you will see a different sort of e-commerce revolution in India. So I would say the next 5 years, so to say, is going to see a deep change in the way commerce is done. The next wave, I would say, in that view would be the adoption of new devices. IoT and 5G will penetrate markets across. So when you say that penetration into urban, semi-urban, 5G will be the key case. And then when you look at 4G extending to the rural areas, which the proof comes from the fact that the funding of BSNL happening from the government, from the proceeds of 5G, is a clear sign that we are about to see a telecom revolution in terms of data access. So the aspect of IoT then merging with 5G to provide access to what we call as the next stage from open finance to open economy will be the stage where India then adopts digital right across the board. So the 6 streams of what we speak about in the G20 DIA will be the ones that will then come together in the open economy to render health tech, ed tech, agri tech, insure tech, all of these coming together, and citizens will benefit from that. So that I would say is my initial view on how I see the next 10 years progressing in India.
Thank you, Rajesh. In fact, I think on the Aadhaar point, it's fascinating to see how we've seen the success of what we call the JAM trilogy, which is the Jan Dhan bank accounts. So the government pushed people to sort of say, okay, look, open bank accounts. They open millions of bank accounts. You have the Aadhaar, and then you empower them with mobile phone internet access and very affordable data rates, which I think is probably one of the cheapest which you will find in the world. And I think, you spoke about UPI, and I was just going through my notes. In Jan 2023, we recorded 8 billion UPI transaction in a month. It's phenomenal. You have never seen scale at such level anywhere in the world. Now, for something like that to sustain on a month-by-month basis and to continuously grow, the infrastructure which has been developed is so robust and it's so advanced that what we are seeing right now is probably a case study for the world, and which is what we've tried to address even in the white papers. And one of the objectives for us has also been to showcase the success of India's DPI to the world. And we are seeing countries adopting UPI. In fact, every month, you'll see in the newspaper, some of the other country is either signing an MOU with NPCI on it or discussing it, or there are options. So countries are adopting it. UPI is going global. And I think the Indian success of India's DPI is definitely a big case study for the world to see. But I want to come to Mr. Thakur. And sir, thank you so much for sparing the time today. You heard Rajesh ji speak about what the next 5 years look like. And I think a couple of things which really catch me over here is open economy and bringing people together on open commerce in terms of leveraging the power of payments to support the growth of the next level of e-commerce. And sir, with your perspective, would love to hear from you what your thoughts are in terms of the overall fintech revolution we are seeing, but also highlight some of the initiatives taken by the government and what are the next steps towards support this growth. So over to you, sir.
I think fintech revolution in India has happened around 40, 50 years back. And if you see, it has opened with the telecom sector. If you see in last 25 years, the one thing that has contributed most to the GDP of the country was the tech revolution. Okay? And from there it starts. If you see the capital market per se, if you talk about BSE, NSE, they were the first fintech companies, okay, where we have seen millions and trillions of transactions happening every day. In fact, in the year 95 itself, BSE and NSE has opened a terminal across the country. And we have moved from open outcry system to online trading platform. In fact, almost 1,800 brokers which are attached to BSE and NSE are in itself a fintech company, whereby, if you see the transactions happening, millions and trillions of transactions worth lakhs and lakhs of crores are happening every day on both the stock exchange, without any disruptions, whereby we are seeing cybersecurity attacks and all those things. And most importantly, what I found is in the Indian community is that the adaptation of everything. You know, we were the first one which has gone in demat mode. Today, all the, you know, if you see the shares or the money transfers that are happening across the exchanges, across the investors, it is happening on time basis without any disruptions. Money is being transferred to the investor account, shares is being transferred in each other's account without any physical mode. So I think we keep on adapting the technology very fast. In fact, the infrastructure that are being adopted by the government, the reserve banks, or the capital market regulators should be, all of them are working in a coordinating fashion, whereby they are ensuring that, you know, without any disruptions, these things keep on moving. As far as the government initiatives are concerned, government has taken a lot of initiatives. The first and foremost initiative that I think, which was very progressive in nature, was Jan Dhan Yojana. Okay, whereby, you know, initially before that, if you see, you know, most of the Indian people were dealing in cash, tax fund transfer was very difficult. You know, there were a lot of brokers there in between. There are a lot of leakages in the funds. So after Jan Dhan Yojana coming, Jan Dhan accounts opening, a lot of, you know, the bankers were put onto the field to open Jan Dhan account. And that was a big change in the whole system. And after that, what we found that, you know, most of the people started understanding the system. Now, with the evolution of this fintech sector, what has happened that we have been able to reach to the bottom of the society, bottom of the community, because there was a huge credit gap. If you see in the MSME sector itself, there was a huge credit gap where the bankers were unable to reach to the people. But after this fintech evolution that we are seeing, and because of this reason, a lot of investments have also come in the fintech sector. And, you know, RBI also keep on, you know, supporting these initiatives. What we found that, you know, a lot of credit gaps got reduced. Okay. And this is the one of the reason that, you know, after COVID also, where everybody was predicting that, you know, we will be in negative rate of growth for another 3-4 years. We were the one country, we were jumped, and today we are one of the fastest growing country. And yeah, fastest moving economy. So I think, and the second thing, you know, what I feel that still a lot needs to be done, because recently we have, our population has crossed to the population of China. Okay, so, and we have got the demographic dividend where around 70% of our population is up to the age of 35. And even the thinking of the Indian community or the young people have changed. Now, less, you know, more and more people want to become more young guy want to become entrepreneurs. And these are changing, and I think with the fintech evolution and fintech growing and use of machine learning and artificial intelligence into the system is going to grow this sector in leaps and bounds. So I think, you know, with the investment coming and with the banks signing MOU with the fintech companies, I think we will be able to serve the community in a big way, and India will remain the fast-growing economy in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Thakur. And I think very pertinent points. In fact, interesting argument. I think 50 years ago, the revolution started with NSE, BSE. Of course, I think that's very, very important to hear. And I think that's absolutely correct, because, you know, this has been going on. I think it was already in our blood. I think when we saw the revolution in the tech stage in the 21st century, the foundation was already, you know, created.
And let me tell you, almost 10 crore investors, you know, in 2020, 31st March 2020, we have got almost around 2.5 crore investors who were registered with the stock exchanges. Today, almost 12 crore investors got registered with the stock exchange. Today, BSE market capitalization is almost 5th in the world. So in last few years, because of all these things, if you talk about Zerodha, Growstock, and all these companies, they are the large fintech company and very profit-making company. So fintech companies are now becoming profit-making also. I always tell them, be profit-making, don't keep on burning money. Otherwise, you will not serve the nation. Yes. So I think if they keep on working in this direction and remain profit-making, they will be in a better position to serve the people.
No, I mean, only if you make profit can, you know, others make profit. So I think, and Rajesh ji was smiling because we were discussing this previously, and he was also very clear that, look, I want to break even within a year, and I want to make profit within a year and a half, because I think that's something which I think is quite ideal. You don't want to keep burning money. But Ajay ji, I want to come to you, and I think, I want to sort of look at the startup angle over here. And, it's fascinating to see that with the connectivity revolution which we've seen in the country, what we have seen is a creation of new kind of fintech companies, the payment aggregators, for example. Of course, you have the brokerage firms and others, and you have digitization of banks, but you have these, intermediary companies which have come up, like the aggregators and, those smaller organizations, and even, companies which are verifying processes, or which are, sort of authenticating transactions and all those things, or who are giving security solutions, for example. So it has given support to multiple level of startups at different stages. What that has done is that it has also allowed for the creation of multiple fintech unicorns, and I think we have around 20 to 30 unicorns. I may be wrong in the fintech space itself. There are quite a few of them, and I think Sir spoke about Zerodha, but there are so many other fintech companies as well at different stages of the value chain. So in your opinion, sir, where do you see, of course, feel free to respond to other speakers and just sort of build on their points, but in general, the startup revolution which we are seeing, how fast and how further and what kind of solutions are we going to see in the next decade?
So, if you look at the solutions which are available today, which is quietly encouraging, right? And if you look at in the last a decade, a lot of fintechs have come up in India, and with the support of the government regulatory, which government is also extending the support in terms of sandbox environment, creating these kind of things. So that way, if you look at payment solutions as such, has become a very big news in the country, right? If you look at our UPI transaction, you just mentioned that, our 8 billion transactions have happened. So it is reaching out to other countries as well. So, but still, if you look at the opportunity as a standpoint, if you look at rural, still it is there. There is a lot of opportunity still resides in rural. So these solutions have to reach out to there, right? Because yes, sir spoke about Jandan accounts. Yeah, if you look at, we work with about 30,000 banking accounts across the country, and we add 500,000 Jandan accounts every month. So like us, we are one of the top player, but like us, there are many players are there. So still there is an opportunity. Jandan accounts are getting opened, but now the banks like corporate banks like HDFC, ICICI, they want to tap these Jandan accounts to the customers who are having a real wealth, right? So if you look at the average balance is about 3,500. So there are customers who maintain a balance in lakhs also. So these banks want to reach out to the rural markets, and they are pretty much working on the neobank platform, wherein to offer not only the account openings, they are also working on the extending the lending products, because that is where is the opportunity available in the rural markets, especially because all the banks are unable to reach those customers, right? So neobank is the next thing which is going to happen. So that's where we are also partnered with HDFC, and HDFC very aggressively looking forward to that. There are some of startups have come in neobank sector, but predominantly they started working only in the urban centric or metro markets. But I feel the rural is the area the coming next 5 years to decade. The focus should be, because our majority of the population lives in less than 5K population, right? So we are in the right space, if I have to say, that we are serving the rural customers, and I think a lot of solutions are expected to serve these customers, especially in terms of lending services. Not only the end consumer, even the MSMEs. Across the country, there are many MSMEs in the rural markets, wherein looking for business loans. So that's the opportunity which I see, and a lot of NBFCs are also focusing on these markets. So I think it's going to be a very interesting space, especially the rural markets coming down the line a decade.
interesting you spoke about, Ajay ji, of rural markets, and I think, in fact, Sachin ji, I'll come to you on that point itself. And, what we call is, I mean, we look at India as one of the largest markets right now. And I think there's a lot of untapped potential as well, right? I think what you spoke about rural markets, I think two things are happening. The purchasing power of an average Indian is rising very fast. And in the last 10 years, I think we've seen significant improvement. I think everybody over here, I'm pretty sure their purchasing power has increased in the last 10 years and continues to rise. And the second is that the middle class is expanding, and it's getting more and more, you may call the word richer, or, it's getting more and more empowered as well. So the ability to spend is increasing. And I think with the evolution of fintech ecosystem, the average Indian is also spending more, and there is a greater circulation of money in the economy, and the money is moving faster. I think these are my ideas I have in terms of the research we do, but Sachinji, feel free to come in. What are your thoughts, I think, in terms of, tapping the more untapped markets, tapping the more untapped population? Not to say that it's not being tapped already, but, realizing the potential, because I do feel that the uniqueness of India lies in the fact that how diverse the country is across multiple regions and languages. And the consumer behavior differs from south to north, west to east, even within a state, different regions, people's spending patterns and saving patterns are quite different, right? So what kind of fintech solutions can we leverage to these people, to these new markets, to the more untapped markets, to bring them into the mainstream and therefore enhance the overall growth of the fintech ecosystem?
Thank you. First of all, good evening all. We started our discussion from our journey of fintech from the last decade. Let me quote one example when I started my journey in fintech industry from last 15 years. So in 2013, I think, I was in a microfinance industry, working for a company. So at that time, we were giving loans to the self-help groups, wherein we appraised them for the microcredit, and we dispersed them in cash. So my guys used to collect cash from a region, Nagpur district, and used to go 150 kilometer long distance, taking that hard cash between 35-40 lakhs, and literally counting those notes and giving that to self-help groups. Women. That was the bravery we did. Okay. Obviously, that was a risk we were carrying, and we didn't have any options. Now, in 2023, if I see same organization doing things differently, now same organization appraising self-help women groups differently, using digital mechanism. Same company is giving them loan with a click, and amount is reaching to the self-help group women. That's called the power of fintech we have seen in last 10 decades. This visible difference I can quote here. Now, at that time, if same woman who is sitting in the village, she had to travel 50 kilometers to a bank or brick and mortar branch to withdraw his 20,000 and 50,000 bucks, and spend more than 1,000, 2,000 rupees to get that money to her home. Now, same woman, with the help of Aadhaar-enabled payment systems, thanks to NPCI and UIDI, can withdraw same amount of money within no time in her own village. Going beyond, some of the fintech partners are providing the doorstep service. If she asks, I want to withdraw, they will visit her home, and she can withdraw that money. What is that? It is a fintech, which has changed over the 10 years. That are the visible differences we have seen because of number of revolution, as rightly said by my fellow panel member, like robust infrastructure. Maybe it is NPCI, UIDI, equal participation by the government and our regulators, which push this fintech revolution in the industry. So, especially I worked in microfinance, banking, and now in fintech. Roynet Solution Private Limited is a startup which is focusing on these basic banking financial services from the last 10 years. We started our journey in 2023, and in 2023, we have, now you called what we can do in rural India to tap that potential. In 2023, we have now a network of 1 lakh of active service centers, customer service points across the country. We are present in every state right now. Now, with this robust structure, this is one company's robust public public financial distribution network. Equally, capital market have its own public distribution network. If we combine this network at this point, which is basically focused on banking services, if fintech industry has to leap and bounce in future, he has to tap this public infrastructure, public finance distribution system to focus on delivering the other services, financial services like insurance, which is unexplored. Insurance industry itself is a nuisance in its infancy in our country, right? So we hope that the public infrastructure, maybe it of a bank, maybe it of the capital market, can be leveraged to deliver services like insurance, services like wealth management services. Obviously, you can see mutual fund has grown leap and bounds, but it is limited to that 30 cities only. If you have to go down into the market, this infrastructure needs to be leveraged to deliver other financial services so that our dream of inclusive finance to the underbanked and unserved rural India can be met.
I think very, very pertinent point, Sachinji. I think the fact that, the ability for us to be able to deliver finance opportunities and, wealth management, as you spoke about, mutual funds, or even just savings and helping them understand how to save, how to invest. A lot of capacity building initiatives, I think, also are required, along with creation of robust public infrastructure. I think the public infrastructure is being developed. I think there's a lot more need to make it reach different communities and different centers of the country. But I want to harp on the point of capacity building and awareness and training programs, because I think we always tend to talk about it, but somewhere, we don't pay too much emphasis in discussions, at least. But I think here we definitely want to focus a little bit on capacity building, because I think that's something which I think you spoke about, the visible change. The fact that today, if I am going on road and if I'm, if you go to a Kirana store or if you're taking a cab, I don't need to carry cash. Everybody is on UPI. It's phenomenal how that happens. We heard the idea of a cashless economy in the vision of the government, in the initial days when, you would hear the Prime Minister talk about, cashless and digital India, and when it was launched in 2015 and 2016, demonetization happened and all that. The focus was to move towards, and I think it was quite visionary at that time, and you see now 7-8 years later, that UPI has grown tremendously, and you're seeing people deal and sort of exchange through UPI. You don't need cash actually in today's time. You can actually go out on the road and you can buy whatever you want to buy, right from a pawn shop to a Kirana store, and still survive. So I don't carry cash because of which, and that's great because, the risk is lower, if you're carrying, if you're on UPI. But I want to come to Rajesh ji, and I just want to sort of focus a little bit on capacity building itself. And I think just to take on from where you left, in terms of the open economy, and you talked about open commerce. Can you just sort of highlight a little bit more on what do you really mean by these terms? Because these terms are also very, interesting terms, new terminologies. We love to hear new names in panel discussions like these, but a little more explanation, and of course, feel free to respond and add to, what other speakers have said. I think everybody really spoke very interestingly and very specific, and there are multiple views which have come, right from financial inclusion to startups to, the journey of India's fintech growth. But over to you, sir.
Thank you. So I'll first take up the point on capacity building. I think when we look at the capacity building aspect in terms of digital economy, the foundation of that in terms of that to succeed and stay at the same pace of growth without causing customer friction is going to be on two critical elements. One is on digital literacy. When we look at rural inclusion, it's very important to have digital literacy, since the aspect of cyber crime, the root cause happens most of the times with registration itself, where the silent SMS is rooted. And gradually the NPCI and various other associated partners have made sure that the way in the which the registration is done, etc., for payment apps is made sure through different SMS messages, etc. But the fact is that typically perpetrators are seemingly one step ahead when it comes to even getting one person on a new type of fraud. So I think the digital literacy is very important when we look at that aspect. When we look at also getting to the next step of that is on the data privacy. And I'm very glad that the retabling of the personal data privacy bill has come through, where hopefully we will see an introduction of the ability for people to have reconsent being done for their data to be stored in India for financial data and critical biological, biometric data, etc. But the most important part is about making sure that they have the right to be forgotten from a firm that they've associated with earlier. Now, when we look at capacity building, these are very strong points from a government policy perspective. And I think those are steps in the right direction, because when you look at any economy that has adopted digital, they have taken up this fact, whether it's GDPR in Europe, etc. How it's been adopted is what has led to, they first brought in GDPR and then open banking became a success. I wouldn't say in the same measure as India, but definitely so. So that's why the introduction of the personal data privacy bill is a very good step. The second part is with regards to responsible regulations, as I would put it. The Reserve Bank of India today has played a very important role, and people probably would undermine that, given that, it is always fashionable to be blaming the regulator. But Reserve Bank of India has really been up to the task in terms of introducing the right regulation at the right time. So when you look at capacity building, the regulations have to be a step forward. There, if you see the way they've regulated the fact of how fintechs have to govern data, how fintechs have to make sure that customer interests are protected, whether it is, let's say, a firm that is selling a product, for them to transparently come out and say who's the backend to it, who's the underwriter to a loan, who's the person who's providing the credit card. These are important aspects for people to understand, because when we've seen through the ages obituaries being written for banking, but it is so proven that they are the ones with capital and they are the ones who are custodians of trust as well. And so the fintechs are true enablers for the rural outreach, or let's say extension of new products to the masses. But at the same time, it's necessary to say who's in the back end providing that element of trust. The third part, I would say, the fourth element is going to be with regards to when we look at capacity building, the ability to render an ecosystem which is able to, addressing your point of what are these open networks. When we look at digital public infrastructure, UPI was one that opened up with the aspect to say you could bank in any bank account through having handles. OSEN is the one where you can have an open credit enablement network, which gives the banks the list of people who are looking for credit, and they have a campaign to sort of reach out and render credit. It's the same with regards to, let's say, a single institution like Mudra, then providing guarantees for loans and underwriting loans for the purpose of, let's say, women empowerment and things like that. And those are, again, astounding figures. If you look at it, it's lakhs of crores that have gone out as credit out to entrepreneurs. Now, when you look at the ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, that is an aspect where typically you've had the large players in India like the e-tailers who've come in and had, I would say, a dominant presence over the market in terms of how for individuals as consumers are going across to them to buy goods. But we are not sure if, let's say, the back end to it in terms of suppliers, etc., do have the same fair treatment. There are aspects that the suppliers do feel that they could have had a better deal with regards to return policy and things like that, right? You can make the return policy from 30 days to 10 days or whatever, but the fact is that they are bearing the cost. The ONDC gives the ability for a consumer to choose from whom they want to buy it, for the supplier to then say that I want to use so-and-so logistics company to deliver the goods, for the logistics company to say that I am present in so-and-so area, So I will strongly deliver that. If you look at it, you are choosing best of breed through an open system. So the buyers and suppliers are put together in an open network. When this would happen, you can imagine that running not just commerce. I was at the event in Paris as well in G20, and they was speaking about the various frameworks. And one of the adoption of the open network has been one where the uh, um, in Bangalore city they introduced the taxis. Yes. They used the same, yeah, Namayatri, and the same framework was used for someone to hail a cab, which then brings down the monopoly of single apps where you can have surge pricing and all of that. Surge pricing is introduced by the person who provides the solution, which, for example, is actually the fiduciary. They neither own the cars, nor the drivers, nor the consumer. They own the data. So, open network then opens up the aspect to say the consumer can choose which cab, and the cab person can choose what price. And the consumer then accepts it. So, this aspect is going to be a game changer in the way commerce is done in the country. Because commerce, when you say digital, cannot be just a monopoly of saying, I'll tell you the price, you pay for that, and somebody else is going to bear the brunt. So this, I think, from a capacity building perspective, the digital public infrastructure, as and when we've introduced those, as and when Reserve Bank of India has brought in the right kind of responsible regulations, is going to open up the economy, acceptance, and also sort of bring the rural economy back into this, because when you look at ONDC, today an artisan from a village can use the ONDC to be a supplier and sell goods. Outreach as such is not an issue. And the last part I want to mention here is with regards to, I think, the policy building around how open network would be done, the aspect of rendering telecom across various sectors. But importantly, when we look at the startup ecosystem, India has seen a surge of startups coming through. And there is a need for responsible regulation even to regulate the startup sector. So for example, I think, of course, this is up to debate, and I hope I'm not taken differently by startups in the cryptocurrency mode, right? I, for one, have worked from 1995 till date in real currency, right? And like I told you, we've been profitable from day one of our operations. We introduce a product, we know how to make profits in a year's time. And this is without being, taking customers for granted, without making sure that, somebody is just gullible and I'll price that. It's right pricing that's done. And the reason it's done is because everything is real. It's asset backed. We are working with banks that are A-rated. We are working with customers that have taken proper credit. We extend the services to them. When it comes to regulations for startups, I think it's a responsible one where we looked at how the government took a decision on cryptocurrency as an asset. And that's again an important thing, which I think from a startup perspective, people need to look at use cases that are going to impact the population from a positive side, rather than one that would say, let's make a quick buck here and quick buck for the customers. Eventually, somebody is going to pay for it. Whether it is when this firm goes public, or whether it is at the time when you start real pricing your solution, and then, or let's say, making sure that the investors don't pay, but customers do. So that, I would say, are the key components of capacity building.
Thank you, Rajeshji. Very, very pertinent points. I think digital literacy, absolutely, I agree. And I think when you spoke about data privacy, I was very happy that, this is being discussed, because we've been doing a lot of work on privacy and data protection. I think the government is ready to bring a bill, and hopefully, the bill will be passed very soon. And there's a lot of work which has gone in the last 6-7 years. The government has published multiple versions of the bill. There was a joint parliamentary committee which sat on it. So there was a lot of multi-stakeholder consultation process initiated by the government of India, and they took inputs from everyone who was involved. Every stakeholder group gave their inputs. The government heard them, and hopefully there will be a law this year. So I think that's very pertinent. I think I would like to go to Mr. Thakur on responsible regulations, but to your point, I think, sir, Rajeshji, I think very well spoken on the fact of the open network which you spoke about. And I think the way these DPIs are being initiated and coming out, it's fascinating to see how they will evolve in the next 5 to 10 years, and how you are trying to create an ecosystem which is supporting growth and which is also championing the idea of openness. which can of course be exported to different countries. But Mr. Thakur, I want to come to you, sir, and feel free to respond to other point, but a little bit on responsible regulation. I think the efforts of RBI are very well appreciated, and I think that a lot of good efforts have been going in the last 5 to 7 years in terms of guidelines and regulations and just the policy initiatives taken up by the Reserve Bank. But in general, sir, in your opinion, what are the new age regulations we need to come up with in order to sustain the growth, but also to leverage and create newer startups?
See, for me, regulation and business are not exclusive, they are inclusive. If you want to have a sustainable growth in any sector, if you want a capacity building, you need to ensure that there should be proper regulation who should not only take care of the people, their privacy, but also give them a security. Okay, and at the same time, it should be ensured that there should not be disruptions or any system failure because of which the transactions get impacted. And that's why we always kept on what Mr. Rajesh has also said, that RBI and regulators are taken negatively. Whenever we frame guidelines, we are being taken very negatively, and there are a lot of feedbacks and, many other things we have to listen. But at the end of the day, if you see in the long term, it's always better for the ecosystem to keep on moving forward. And therefore, I think the regulations are very important. Nowadays, you are talking, you are seeing that, cyber attacks start happening. There are a lot of money gets transferred. Okay, and all those things kept on happening. And therefore, we need to have lots of checks and balances everywhere. Now, as far as capacity building is concerned, and how to enhance it, I think a lot of investment needs to put on the digital infrastructure. We also need to ensure that we are giving the funds to the people at a very at a very good price, not at a very good very heavy cost, so that they can use it for their business purposes. We also need to penetrate a lot. For example, he has talked about insurance sector. Okay, very less penetrated. Still, we have not used the fintech platform for the insurance sector. So I think a lot needs to be done for the capacity building, and we wish to go into various sectors. We are talking about mutual fund platform. Today, BSE has launched a mutual fund platform, whereby we are seeing a lots of transactions. Almost 80% of the market share being controlled by BSE mutual fund platform. In the same way, we need to have a robust insurance platform, whereby we can have a lot of insurance penetration in the country. So I think a lot of things needs to be done. I'm not so technically solid as Mr. Rajesh and other my co-panelists is there, but I think we need to have a robust infrastructure with a lot of investment in digital infrastructure to reach to the various people. Now, government has taken various measures. I will give you a small example. For example, earlier we used to pay on the toll in cash. Now, FASTag has been implemented, and you can pay through, any of this fintech platform. So I think it's a big measure, whereby, a lot of cash had been curtailed from the system. So I think these are the various measures that have been taken to have a proper, robust infrastructure into the system. And I think that all the regulators, etc., are doing very responsible job and ensuring that there should be a robust infrastructure and systems in place.
Thank you, sir. I think there's a lot of examples which have come out. FASTag, Jandhan, Aadhaar, UPI, so many.
Let me tell you, this fintech platform, how it has expedited, demonetization. Demonetization was one of the biggest region whereby, people habit got changed. You need to change the habit of the people. After demonetization, we have seen a lot of cashless transactions happening. In the same way, after COVID, we have seen a lot of, these transactions happen. Even Zomato, Swiggy, all these transactions were happening cashless. So I think these things have also changed besides the demonetization, etc. Besides that, we are seeing now eKYC, digital signatures. So all these are government measures which has been taken and which has helped in, expediting the or QR codes. So all these things are, and I don't think in India we should worry more on capacity building, etc. We are competent enough. We have got highly skilled people. We are technologically very sound. And I think only thing is that we need to be responsible from both the sides. And if we are responsible, then I think nobody can, stop this evolution that we are seeing in the country.
I think there's so many variants of the work startups are doing, sir. I think, you spoke about QR codes and FASTag and all those things. I think it's fascinating because in many ways, scalability is, and, this is something which, whenever we travel or we talk to, foreigners, I think they're just surprised at the scale at which things are happening in India. You're seeing billions of transactions worth crores and hundreds of crores of
The
rupees.
scale is unlimited. Today
Absolutely.
we are just 8 crores. If you see the population, it's much to rise. So we have huge population. In fact, if you see the internet penetration, or the, it is, almost 90 crore people has got the access. If you see the smart mobiles are available at affordable price, you can buy. Even you can buy it at EMI also. So all these options are there, and as faster will be the penetration of these things, you will see this, fintech companies growing in leaps and bounds.
Absolutely. Ajay ji, I want to come to you and, just sort of taking on from where Mr. Thakur left. Capacity building, of course, responsible regulations, I think, sir spoke about open networks. And I think, demonetization and pandemic, I think, of course, were two important key reasons in terms of further evolving the habits of people to, go cashless or go digital. In fact, ONDC was ideated post-pandemic in 2020, so I think the number of digital transactions have increased tremendously. And now India is at a cusp of global leadership of fintech, right? And I think the G20 presidency coming at the perfect time. And DPIs being one of the key discussion points as part of the G20 agenda itself showcases how seriously the government of India takes technology, but how seriously the world is taking India when it comes to technology. And, the creation of India's stack, you're looking at across multiple sectors, be it Aadhaar or be it account aggregator or ONDC or UPI and all those things, and how private sector is also participating. Let's say for UPI, there are so many tech companies, private tech companies which are participating. Nowadays, we are hearing a lot of, tech companies or e-commerce companies are willing to join and trying to partner. So there is a lot of collaboration happening between, the within the Indian ecosystem, government-led techno solutions, private sector, and there's a buzz around in the air that, India is now at the cusp of global leadership. In your opinion, what is it that, we need to do as a country in the next 5-10 years to sustain this level of leadership, but to also emerge as a problem solver for the world? And what are the sort of solutions we need to develop or harness, and the kind of skill we need to harness to get there?
Yeah, I would like to touch upon 3 areas here. One is on the ONDC, which Rajesh ji has spoken, and also the as we speak digital literacy. I think financial literacy is also important, especially in the rural segment if we talk, right? So in fact, if government can take up financial literacy from the standard 5th as a curriculum itself, that would be a great step, because as we grow, this is very critical and important for the country, because at some point in time, India in mid of 2040s or 30, 35, we'll be, developing country, right, by that time. So that way, this financially literacy will really help the, economy to grow. The younger generation, the future generation will be really handy in terms of techie, because the way we have seen the journey, the way they have started their journey is completely different. So that way it will help. And on the ONDC part, while we have seen that, the adoption is there. I could see that, some of the 100,000 transactions, etc., are happening there. But the biggest opportunity for the ONDC, with ONDC coming into the picture, the MSME manufacturing sector. So there is a huge opportunity I see, because they don't have a visibility currently, right? So even if they have to go and register themselves in Amazons or Flipkarts, etc., they are not visible because of the competition, the search, etc., and all those things. So this ONDC platform, I think this will be really a game changer for the MSME manufacturers. There are, if you look at, every state has got a specific brands, and they are literally leading, or they have a very good market share, but they are not able to expand to other states, or, as you mentioned that, south, north, east, west. Our country is, it functions in a different way. Within the state itself, you'll have a different tastes, right? Within a 1 kilometer, you have a different products will be selling when it comes to food or any other products as well. So that way, there are the many manufacturers will have an opportunity. I think ONDC is a really great platform for them, which they can use and leverage the services, because which currently they are not able to do due to the expansion, enable to expansion, or the spends on the marketing like the big multinationals or the large corporates do. So this is the opportunity for them. And on the wealth management services, right? So if you look at the rural, I am more talking rural because we closely work with them. Rural is still a assisted market for the customer, and customers they go by the trust. The end user, they believe the trust, and they believe the agents whom they are interacting with. So for them it could be a banking outlet, it could be a financial outlet. Like, there are so many financial outlets also have come, like, who offer the domestic money transfer, insurance is there. So these kind of things are there. I think somewhere, if we can educate these agents, today if you look at, across the country, if we talk, there are more than 4 to 5 million such kind of agents are there working in a different platforms. So educating these agents would really help. This is one of the capacity building which we can talk about, because this will also take the big players to the rural markets, and hence the opportunity lying there. That's what my take and my feel.
Thank you, Ajayji. And Sachinji, I just want to come to you for final remarks, because I think we are also just running. I think we are a little beyond time, and I think we have to release a report as well. So, closing remarks by you, sir. I think you've heard all our speakers, speak and sort of share their thoughts, but specifically on the rural economy and microfinance, and I think just ability of financial inclusion. What is it that you want to see happen in the next 5 years, 10 years to further the growth?
In Crux, we discussed a role of our fintech industry in coming 10 decades, probably for economic growth of our country. We touched capacity building. We touched regulators, which are obviously participating very actively. Government policies, which are supporting fintech industries. But in entire of this, I think if fintech industry has to support fintech evolution in coming years, we need to have a few points where we need to focus. First thing, as rightly said, digital literacy. Because as a fintech industry, a fintech company, I am bleeding every day because of frauds in crores. Yeah, this is our situation, that we cannot sleep in nights because of frauds. And frauds are happening, as rightly said by sir, because of lack of digital literacy. Right. So this is one of key factor in our evolution. How can we protect customer data along with avoiding the cyber crimes, which are hitting us in crores? That will be the key in coming days for fintech evolutions. And obviously, everyone has heard the term artificial intelligence. Now I, as a fintech entrepreneur, always look at this as positively, though every day ad hits me that AI will snatch your job. But I'm very much positive about AI, that it will, like ChatGPT, it will help us to reach our customers, to our partners, to make them enable to grasp that financial literacy which they require in their daily operations, in daily transaction. And if we are able to control, or if we are able to deliver this literacy to them at the right time, as rightly said by RBI Innovation Hub, it is not about the capacity building now. It is about the customer behavioral changes which can be brought about by that financial literacy. And definitely, I hope this artificial intelligence in terms of different technologies will help in coming days to utilize this infrastructure positively right now in last decades we used banking services, basic banking. We focus fintech industry on the basic banking services. But now the time has come where there is only 4% penetration of health insurance in the rural India. Not even 20% of the market is captured by life insurance. This entire industry ecosystem can be utilized to robust infrastructure, robust growth in insurance sector. This robust distribution network, which is in millions, can be utilized. Sir, right now said that only 8, and out of entire mutual fund business, 80% business is on BSC platform only. So can you imagine the potential we have in this distribution network to utilize in coming days to push the mutual fund growth industry in the, and we have already started. Now in 2010, before 2000, there was only 70% mutual fund contribution from rural area, which has grown to 24% in 2023. So in coming years, clubbed with the artificial intelligence, we can expect a phenomenal growth in wealth sector using this distribution network. Maybe it a banking distribution network, fintech bit distribution network, really has a potential to contribute to the economy of the country via wealth management services. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sachinji. And I'd like to conclude the panel because I think we have to release the report. But thank you all to all our speakers. Thank you so much, Rajesh ji, Ajay ji, Mr. Thakur, and of course, Sachinji, for your interventions. And I think, there's a lot of learning which we take from here, specifically around opportunities in the sector based on fundamental growth which we have witnessed over the last many decades, and just the the ability of the Indian entrepreneur and the Indian startup and the Indian consumer who is willing to adopt new technologies, willing to adopt new ways of doing financial transactions. And I think there's the larger ecosystem growth which we are witnessing. I think it's a lesson for the world and definitely a case study for the world. And I think that's the objective with which we organize this panel discussion as a side event to the G20 proceedings. And I'd like to now invite all of us to, I think we'll have the report launch. So maybe we can have the report and then we'll sort of take it from there.
Hello. Yeah. I would also like to invite our executive committee members, Mr. Anand Singhania and Mr. Chaturvedi, both to please come on the dais for releasing the report. Please. So maybe you have to remove the ribbons and unveil it. Thank you very much, Kazim, for that moderation and all the panelists for being with us here. Unfortunately, we're still awaiting the news in terms of Honorable CM and Secretary. Both are in the Assembly, and the Assembly session is going too long, and we are also running out of time. That's why we thought that we would finish off this, and in case we are in some luck during the dinner, if someone turns up, we will invite them to interact with us. But for the time being, I would like to close this session and thank all the participants for being part of this session. And I think we'll also share QR code for this report, which can be downloaded for your reading. And if you have anything to comment on or suggest on, please reach out to Kazim or Fiki team and enjoy the dinner. Thank you very much.